Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the VTIC October webinar that we're delighted to once again present together with our web marketing partner, Webfirm. Great to have so many people back on board again. It's been a very big month in tourism land, in VTIC land. My name's Ian McDougall. I'm the Business Development Manager at VTIC, and once again, great to have you here. Now, this month's webinar, many of you have attended, in fact, the Victorian Tourism Conference in 2017 and also 2018. And you heard a lovely lady from the University of Tasmania, Dr. Anne Hardy, talk about Tourism Tracker, an innovative tracking device of sorts for tourists. Lots of things have been happening in the background, and those of you who actually came to Cape Schanck for our conference a couple of months ago, both heard and met Martin Anderson, who together with his team at Tourism Research Technology have now introduced Gulliver, the subject of today's webinar. Now, all of us at VTIC are delighted to partner with Martin, and I, like you, have actually been looking forward to this webinar very, very much. Lots of questions I'm sure you will have. Please ask them as we go, and Martin has promised he'll answer them as we go through, so please don't hesitate to ask any questions. And of course, don't forget, we always tape our webinars. This will be available on the VTIC YouTube site. Not too sure how to find that. Jump onto the VTIC website, vtic.com.au, and up at the very top of that, there is a little YouTube button. Click on that, and within about 48 hours, you can hear this webinar. But of course, at any time, you can listen to any of our past webinars as well. Enough from me. We've got a very interesting presentation today. Martin is desperate to get stuck in it, so I'll hand over to him. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Martin Anderson from Tourism Research Technology to talk all about Gulliver. What do tourists actually do?
Thank you very much, Ian, and delighted to be here. I think our friends at Webfirm are just, is that right? We possibly have just got slides up on screen. That's perfect timing. Awesome. All right. We're still right. So look, as Ian mentioned, my name is Martin Anderson from Tourism Research Technology, and I'm here today to talk a little bit about Gulliver, which is our product for mapping and analysing tourist behaviour at a whole of system level. But more than that, I'm sort of generally here to talk about, the potential of electronic surveying and tracking of tourists as they move through regions. Let me just see if I can swap to the next slide. Oh, yep, okay. Okay, that's all good, we're working.
We're on fire, Martin. We're on fire now.
We're cooking with gas. As Ian mentioned, I'm very, very happy to take questions throughout the presentation. The suggestion is that we have a conversation as we go rather than wait till the end. So if you've got any burning questions as we go through, don't sit on them. Throw your hand up, throw a question in the chat window, and we'll get to it as we talk. So I guess to start with, the big question is, what do tourists actually do while they're in Victoria? Every year we've got 3 million international visitors coming to Victoria, 10 million domestic overnight visitors to Victoria. But how much do we know about what they do while they're actually in Victoria? We've got fantastic surveys and measurements out there, for judging intent, following tourists through that whole booking process as they, consider a destination, research it, book it, but then they get on the plane and they come to Victoria, and it's a little bit of a black box. We know some things about them because we asked them after their trip, but in terms of actually seeing where they go while they're in Victoria, and which businesses and tourist attractions they interact with, if they experience congestion on the Great Ocean Road, if they use Melbourne as a hub and take day trips out to the region, all of these things are kind of hard to determine with any accuracy.
Yeah, I guess, Martin, also when you're doing the surveys of visitors after when they're leaving, or they've gone home. They actually can't remember sometimes, or some of their timings might be a bit out.
Yeah.
This sort of stuff would give you exactly what they did, when they did it, where they did it, I guess.
I think that's absolutely true. I think there's well-known documented studies that show, tourists' recollections of where they've been that are not perfect. That they are that asking someone 2 weeks later whether they've been to Warragul or Warrnambool, if they're is pretty tough. I mean, I'm from Tasmania and I struggle to work out whether Strahan or Swansea, which side of Tasmania those two are on. So if asking a tourist who's only been there for a short period of time is a pretty big ask. I mean, the other things we know about doing the kind of surveys that are either, about tourist intentions or after they've been in a market is that they're really time consuming. And actually one of the things that I went to a great Destination Melbourne event, the Exchange, last month, and there was a panel of speakers, including the Victorian representative from Tourism Australia, and I was trying to remember her name this week.
Christy Carstairs,
right?
Lovely lady.
So Christy was on stage, and she was saying we spend lots and lots of money, and Tourism Australia spends, Tourism Research Australia spends lots of money every year to collect information about people who come to Tasmania. But she said by the time the data is collected, it's formatted into a report, it's passed around the office and makes it onto her desk. She said it's 6 months old,
yeah.
and it's interesting, but it's not actually useful.
That is a very, very good point, Mark.
So I was struck by, I mean, that seems tragic to me that they're spending all this money, but actually by the time they get the information, it's too late to do anything, with it. So it takes a long time. There's long surveys can lead to tourist fatigue as tourists sort of go through a long list of questions. So you only capture a certain type of tourist, and it's a high cost to do the surveys, but it's also pretty tough to change too. So if partway through a season you realise, oh wait, we really want to know this, and changing the surveys that are out in the field are pretty tough. Or for example, if you wanted to test the recognition of a particular marketing campaign and you wanted to change that with the season, that's pretty hard to do. So all of those things are sort of challenges with the existing sort of survey methodology that we would use. And alongside this, there's another major trend that's happening, which is that tourists are traveling with their smartphones. Google's reporting shows that 70% of US travelers agree that they always use their smartphones while traveling in 2017. So up from 40% in 2015. So that's a pretty big trend, and 70% is huge. And for Australians, 61% of smartphone users use their mobile device for directions while they're traveling around. And I think I was talking to you this morning, Ian, about visitor information centres and
absolutely, yeah,
and potentially the way in which usage of smartphones in destination is changing the way younger people gather information, and they may not be visiting visitor information centres or engaging with the people in that way. They might be going straight to their phones because they prefer to ask Google than ask a person, because Google always gets it right.
I personally prefer the ask a person part. But that's just me, maybe a bit more old school, but also you get the local advice.
Yeah.
The little helpful hints, that sort of stuff, which is fantastic.
So given that we've got the challenges of surveying people, that it takes a long time, it's expensive, and by the time you get the data, it's pretty much out of date. Can we use those smartphones that people are already traveling with them to more accurately collect information and collect more information about people? So that's one of the things that we set out to test in Tasmania, and the kind of things that that you can do with an app that tracks and surveys tourists while they move through a region, is you can provide that much more accurate and live data about where tourists go. So instead of asking them which towns and which tourist attractions they interact with, and you can actually watch them, and that makes a profound difference to the level of detail you can collect. So all of a sudden you know not just which towns they passed through, but where they stopped. Without asking them, where they stayed overnight. you can drill down to see which tourist attractions that they interacted with in their trip. You can collect information in pieces. So instead of just in the airport lounge handing someone an 8-page survey, you can progressively collect information throughout their trip. So you can ask them a little bit of information at the start, you can ask them a little bit of information at the end. You could pop up a survey after they move through a national park to ask what their experience with it was, and that really cuts down on that fatigue of people giving up partway through a survey. And because it's electronic, you can change the survey questions and incentives that you're offering anytime. And the other thing that potentially that you can do, and we do with the Gulliver platform, is offer it in multiple languages, which is pretty hard to do with a printed survey, to cover both English and some other English.
And how many other languages do you actually cover, Martin?
Well, the Gulliver app is designed so that it can support any number of languages. In Sweden at the moment, we're doing a tracking survey that's available in 4 languages: so English, Danish, German, and Swedish. And in Australia, we mostly do Australian and Chinese.
Okay.
But really, it's about the demographics of tourists that you're trying to capture. So, yeah.
Wow.
The other things that collecting this information electronically is that you can really cut down the time required to generate reports, and you can achieve scale with a flexible and better quality data. So instead of waiting for someone to tick a box on a piece of paper and then OCR that into scan it into some other system, then wait for the report to come out at the end of the month or at the end of a quarter, what we can do is the day after tourists leave a region, we can run their survey and location data through our automated reporting platform and add them to the reports the very next day. So you can see information really right up to the minute.
It's pretty much real time. Actually, we've got our first question in. Thanks for that, Stephen, who's I think one of our regulars at the VTIC Webinar Series. He's made a comment. He said, "Sounds sounds a little Big Brotherish. What about privacy? If the people are installing an app or whatever on their own device, how do you go with the privacy regulations?"
Look, I think that's a really good question, and it's something that we've had to deal with. So the Gulliver's app uses informed consent throughout. So we're explicit that everyone who takes part is contributing their data to a research project. And we show them all the data that has been collected, and we give it back to them. So at the end of their trip, we give them their trip history and survey data back to them. People can opt out at any point. And because people are informed about what they're taking part in, and they know the information that they're giving us, that covers off all of those privacy issues. So I mentioned that we're doing a project in Sweden at the moment. The Swedish government has now said that they won't buy any mobile phone data from telecom providers because none of the mobile phone users gave consent to the telecom providers to on-sell their data. So we can do this reporting and tracking project in Sweden because we're upfront with people about what we're doing. And we can provide that information that they now can't buy from the telecom providers because it's essentially against the new privacy regulations.
So you're almost like showing the people their full itinerary that they did,
yes.
And they can then share that with their friends.
That's
if they
right.
say, I just spent a fantastic week and a half in Victoria doing, and here's what I did.
That's
you
right.
pass that itinerary through.
Yep.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and so you can retrace your steps and share your trip history with your friends.
Oh, that's sensational.
Yeah. So what we're doing with Gulliver is we're mapping and monitoring where people go, and we see this as there's a sort of a continuum of research to right through to guiding the tourist experience. And what we're aiming to do right now is to do the best tracking and research and provide and collect the best data about where tourists go within a market. But we do see that long term there may be opportunity to extend the tourist experience and potentially change their behaviour, by recommending and guiding tourists to do different things. So for example, what we're showing here on this slide is where you start out with the sort of that passive research. Very, very beginning, you start out asking, for the demographics of the people who come to your region, and maybe after that, once you know who they are, you ask them what their trip was like, and if there's anything that could be improved. With the Gulliver research app, we collect all that information that you would otherwise collect with a paper-based survey, but we add to it that tracing element of being able to watch where they go and more accurately collect that information. Beyond that, the next step beyond that is to then, try and impact those tourists and change their behaviour. So, how can we actively disperse tourists, into less visited areas? Or, for example, I was talking to someone about the Great Ocean Road, and they were saying that one of their major issues is everyone turns up at the same time.
Yeah.
Are there opportunities in the future to encourage tourists to go earlier or later and avoid those peak periods?
So you can give them messages as they go, perhaps.
Yeah.
Actually, we have another question as well, Mark. Yep. If I can just quickly jump in. Tim, thanks, Tim. Do you need to provide an incentive to get them to use it? So all about incentive, I guess, about making people sign on to actually do this.
Yeah, I think that's very true. You do need to recognise that tourists are giving you their time and their data, and that's valuable. So in different running this program in different places, we provided different incentives. In Tasmania, the only incentive we provided to people was a history of where they went.
Given the itinerary, as we spoke about before.
So people took part in order to contribute to a research project, and then to have their history to share with their friends. In Sweden and in a recent trial on Phillip Island, which I'll share with you in a minute.
I am looking forward to hearing about that.
Yeah. So in that case, what we did was we also provided a small gift. So what the process was, after tourists had installed the app and completed the survey, it unlocked a gift code that they could then present and receive a small thank you gift. And that's worked well in both those areas. So I think there's what we would expect is different locations or different regions may need a different way of saying thank you. I think that trip history is always going to be there as an option, but another little thank you, whether that's a discount code or a small gift or a free cup of coffee, is likely to be valuable.
Yeah, maybe on day 3 get a message, get a cup of coffee by going to this cafe or
that's right.
This type of,
because the reality is that tourists are giving you really valuable information, and so it's worth saying thank you for that.
Yep.
So in terms of what we do, and what the Gulliver Research app does is we're allowing local tourist organisations and the local community to feed questions in that they want to know from about the tourists that come to a region, and the app then surveys those tourists and tracks them while they're moving through a region, and then we then have those automated reports and live dashboards that are automatically updated every night, showing where tourists go. So what does the app? What does the research app look like? So this is an example of the research app that we ran in Tasmania. As you can see, or it might be a little bit small. There's a number of different surveys available in English and Chinese. So we can be really flexible about what we're asking people and when we're asking it throughout their trip. Tourists get through the app, they can see where they've been each day of their trip. So they get that trip history, live as they're moving through the region, and then at the end of their trip, they get it emailed to them as well, so they can view it online and share it. And the kind of things that we're, so the base level questions that we ask, standard, information to determine, where they've come from, how they've arrived in a region, demographics, age, gender specifications. So those are the sort of the entry level sets of questions, socioeconomic questions too, and then feeding into, more, travel needs and attitudes based questions, inferring what sort of person they are, and then using that to investigate how that impacts on their behaviour when they're in market.
Actually, Peter's just popped up with a question on this one, Martin. How many of these questions are optional?
We've made the decision to make all of the questions optional.
Yeah. Particularly I think probably Peter's on about maybe the income, that sort of stuff.
Absolutely, and it is we're quite explicit that people only have to answer those questions if they wish to. I mean, so any information that they're prepared to give you, combined with the location, with the trip history of where they've been, is valuable information. So you definitely don't want to sort of exclude people from the program if they don't want to tell you their income.
Sure.
And so so all of the any question can be skipped, and the tourist can still take part in the program.
And Pauline has just popped up with a question about the demographics. She's saying, is it just the person whose phone has been downloaded, or how can you cover off families and how many kids you have, that sort of stuff?
So what we do in that case is we do ask about the specific person we're tracking, but then we also ask them about who they're traveling with. So what's the group size and who they're traveling with. So we capture both all of that information at the same time.
Excellent. Thank you. Please keep those questions coming in. Some really good questions, and we love it. Thank you very much.
So I guess because this is pretty new and novel, collecting data in this way. So one of the really interesting things was the first round of this project that we ran in Tasmania. Tasmania, being an island, has some quite good tourist data. So there's an existing survey that's done of people who come to Tasmania every year, called the Tasmanian Visitor Survey. So what we could do is we could test the Gulliver app that we were using to track and survey people, and see the type of people that we could capture with that app compared to the sample that we knew we were already getting with the TVS. And so what we found was we got a pretty similar kind of breakdown. So the existing research methods and this new method of collecting information via a phone, we got pretty similar kind of information. So the report I've got on the screen here is showing the breakdown of, based on which state of Australia people were from. The above the line percentages are the percentages that we collected through the Gulliver app in Tasmania, and then underneath is the percentages that were collected normally by the TVS. So you can see for New South Wales, we collected, about 32% of the people we collected were from New South Wales, whereas the TVS expected about 30%. And Queensland, we had 14%. The TVS normally gets about 17%. So it was, relatively similar. And in terms of some of the other things that we found, there was no, tracking people using a phone. You might be concerned that this might skew the sample towards young people, but actually what we found was, we had good engagement across the board. So over on the right of the screen there, that's a sort of a breakdown of the age groups. That's each decade of age. Sorry, there's no key on that graph, but you can see, from 20s onwards, we got a pretty even split right up until people make it through into their 70s. So from that point of view, we were confident that we could, use this as a strategy to collect information and have a good representative sample of people, and without excluding particular demographics, just because we were collecting information via a smartphone.
And once again, actually another question there from Paul, I think it is. I think he's referring to the previous slide about the differences between Gulliver and the Tasmania Visitor Survey.
Yeah.
And the numbers of the states that people came from was fairly close. But he's asking about, what about on the other things that you tracked? Were there any major differences to what the TVS came out with? Well, I hope I read that one correctly, Paul.
Well, look, I think one of the really interesting things is obviously as I said, the accuracy of the information. So, you know, even though the volume of tourists and that sort of that we were collecting and the general sort of where have they come from information was the same. When you get down to watching what they do within the region, that provided a level of data that wasn't previously available. So, for example, people in Tasmania were unaware that a large number of tourists flew into Hobart, travelled up the east coast, and then left via Launceston. Tourism Tasmania had always marketed the East Coast Drive as a loop. So the expectation was that people would fly into Hobart, rent a car, travel up the east coast of Tasmania,
and go inland or something.
Then come in, you know, go to Launceston, drive back down, drop their car off, and fly out of the airport that they came.
But not the open airport. Instead, people were doing an open jaw.
An open jaw. That's right. So, which
wow.
was, and the really powerful thing about, you know, collecting that the location information is you can actually see that. You can watch where people go, and it's and then also just the distances that people would travel. That challenged assumptions for local industry as well. So the idea that people would fly in and then rent a car, drive for 3 or 4 hours. That's a concept that didn't make a lot of sense to locals, or it would challenge locals' assumptions that the expectation was people would fly into either a major city, Hobart or Launceston, spend their first night in that town, and then distribute from there. Yeah. And that wasn't always the case. One of the other things that we could, you know, in terms of the data that we're collecting on the screen here, you can see because we're collecting the data in real time, you know, we know how fast people are traveling, amongst other things. So how long they spend in a location, but we can do other things with the data as well. So in Tasmania, we've done road safety reports as well, and potentially you could highlight areas where groups of tourists, you know, travel, you know, at risky speeds, or other things, or demographics of particular demographics that move in particular ways that you may want to track. Yeah, so that was Tasmania. That was Tasmania. Look, so that's the sort of a general background information about what the problems that we're aiming to solve with the Gulliver app, and the sort of, you know, what we're doing, the way in which we're collecting data and what we can do with it. But rather than talk in just sort of general abstracts and sort of you know, talk about Tasmania too much, because I think we're all, you know, everyone in Victoria is sick about hearing about Tasmania.
We're Victorian.
Yeah, that's right. So look, what we wanted to do was do a local study and present the information here for this webinar. So 4 weeks ago, we reached out to the destination Phillip Island people, and
thank you to Kim, Pauline, and the whole team down there for getting involved in this. We were delighted to introduce you, to Martin. I know you met at the conference as well, but it was just it just made so much sense to get a really good base start going.
Yeah, and look, we were thrilled with the support we had from the people of Phillip Island. Tourism obviously is hugely important to Phillip Island. I mean, I don't need to tell you guys that. You would all know much better than me. You know, 2.4 million domestic and international visitors every year, and nearly 40% of the economy is based on tourism. So it's a pretty big deal for those guys.
And growing as well, we're pleased to say.
Yeah, and so what we did was, you know, in a really quick period, in 2 weeks, we put together a Phillip Island research app, so tailored for Phillip Island, with entry and exit surveys in both English and Chinese, and we, with the support of the Phillip Island team, we recruited tourists through the visitor centre as you enter Phillip Island. We used a simple banner, which you can see there on screen. Just, you know, telling visitors we'd appreciate their help, links to the website to download and install the app, and as I mentioned previously, the team from Phillip Island did very generously give a small gift to people who took part. It was only a small gift, but just by way of saying, you know, thank you to people who gave their data and their time to take part, So 2 weeks from the first contact to be in market tracking people, and we've been tracking tourists over the last 2 weeks, and we're delighted to have successfully recruited just under 50 tourists over that 2-week period. As you'd expect, you know, the vast majority of those people are Australian and from Victoria.
It was also over school holidays as well, Martin.
We had 1 week of the school holidays, that's right, and that was fantastic as well. We had about just over 60% of the people we tracked were there to see wilderness and natural scenery, and then the rest of the tourists were there for other reasons. You can see over on the right-hand side here that, you know, sorry, the key's a bit small, but the large blue area on the right is people who this was their first trip to Phillip Island. So we did have nearly half the people we tracked were there for the first time.
I wonder if that's an indication there, Martin, as to why they dropped into the VIC, perhaps.
Yep, that's possible. So yeah, the first time on the island, they're wanting someone to sort of, you know, get them started,
get the local knowledge.
Yeah,
perhaps that
right.
might have been part of it.
Yeah.
Actually, Grace has just popped in with a question. Thanks, Grace. You recruited these ones for the Phillip Island study through the Visitor Information Centre. What other ways have you recruited people for other studies, other surveys?
Yeah. So look, we've done a few different methods of recruitment. So from just a banner by itself to advertise the program with no other inducement. We've used recruiters. In Sweden we have recruiters who talk to. In Sweden, one of the target demographics are cyclists that we're trying to track. So they stand by the bike track and have a chat to people as they come past. But there are other ways you could recruit people as well. So if you have a mailing list, you could. All of this is electronic, so you could invite people to take part in the study via email, and that would work. You could target people, via social media or other marketing campaigns. People with particular interest, or so we've mostly at this stage recruited people, in destination as they arrive in a destination. But you could do that in other more conventional marketing ways as well.
Thank you. Hope that answers the question, Grace.
Yeah. All right, so now I'm going to try something which may or may not work on screen, but I'm going to give it a shot anyway.
In VTIC, we love to try different things. Let's give it a go.
So,
hey, bingo.
We
follow the dots.
Follow the dots. So this is the animated view of tourists moving around the island. As you can see over on the right-hand side, you can slice and dice the tourists based on some of those demographic information of who they're traveling with, when they were born, what were their reasons for visiting the island, and this just watching people moving around. So this is day one. This is the first day of people's trips. Most of the people we tracked on Phillip Island had a one-day trip, that makes sense. That lines up, I think, with what you would expect for Phillip Island. One of the, you can see, you may not be able to see it, may be a bit small, but down we've got a time scrubber down the bottom. You can see the time of the day that you're looking at as people move around. One of the interesting things that you can that we noticed in watching people is that before lunchtime, most of the tourists ended up at Cowes for lunch. But after lunchtime, you see a lot more people who are making their way over to the penguin observing
Summerland Beach.
Summerland Beach.
Phillip Island Nature Park.
Yeah. So look, the animated view of watching where people go is interesting, and it's sort of it's good fun. But that's really at the top level of the reporting. What we can also do with that information is dig a lot deeper and actually start to compare groups of people and work out how what impacts on their behaviour. So things that we can do with the data that we've collected are we've got a heat map view of showing the density of movement around Phillip Island, and on the right you can see everywhere on Phillip Island that all of the visitors went. So pretty good coverage of the whole island. A lot of people did a complete loop of the island. You can see we had a group of people who took a cruise from Cowes down to Summerland and back again. So we got some people who are out on the water there. You know, the Churchill Island, you know, got a lot of action too, and the national parks. But on the left-hand side, if we exclude from the heat map people who are visiting Phillip Island for wilderness wildlife, so then on the left-hand side is everyone who's visiting Phillip Island for, you know, motorsports or to visit friends and relatives or for any other reason, and you can see that they're a bit less. They don't cover the same area of the island. Yeah. They don't make it out to the other national parks. They didn't make it onto the water. They're a bit more targeted in what they do. And so this is, you know, sort of starting to get into, you know, the kind of things that you can start to do when you combine that location data that we're collecting with the demographic data that we're asking people for.
Yeah.
So when we go one level deeper, what the next thing that we did with Phillip Island was using our reporting platform. We picked out some areas of particular interest on Phillip Island. So hopefully in that map, on the map there, you can see that we've drawn little regions, little map regions around areas of particular interest on the island that we wanted to know a bit more about tourists who go to that area. So we've got Cowes up the top. You know, we've got the Summerland
beach area.
Summerland Beach, has got the penguin viewing. In here we've got the Grand Prix circuit, Churchill Island over here.
Down Cape Woolamai on the bottom.
Yeah, and so with those regions defined, our reporting platform then goes off and it runs all of the tourist paths through those regions within Phillip Island, and then we can find out some more information about tourists who go to that particular part of the island. And the really valuable thing from our point of view is we can do this at any point. You don't need to know going in all of the areas that you want to track. Because we can rerun this at any point in the future. So if next year, for example, there was an event or, you know, a major event in another part of Phillip Island, and all of a sudden you wanted to know,
like Smith's Beach, for example, which is a wonderful area of Phillip Island.
Yeah. So if next year you wanted to come back and go, I want to compare the number of tourists that went to Smith Beach in 2018 to the number of people who went in 2019.
Yep. That's
fine. We can draw a little box around Smith Beach, run those reports again, and we can get those comparisons. So it's that's one of the really exciting things, is you don't necessarily need to know ahead of time everything that you want to know. So this is then a couple of the reports that we've pulled out for Summerlands. So in terms of the group of people that we collected, Summerlands was pretty big. You know, the penguins is one of the major reasons people go to Phillip Island. Obviously, 71% of the tourists that we tracked, you know, made it into this region at some point during their trip to Phillip Island. You can see down the bottom here, one of the things that we can do is provide a distribution of time. So we can show the percentage of tourists that spent, you know, between different amounts of time within a region, and you can then compare this from between regions. So
and this is based on a sample of 50, yeah?
That's right. So based on those 50 people, we've had, you know, nearly 50% spend between, you know, 2 and 4 hours within that region. So and that sort of makes sense in terms of what you might expect. You know, they go on, they park their car, they go out to see the penguins. You know, they get a spot on the beach, wait for the penguins to come in, go back again.
Yeah. Maybe have a meal, go through the gift shop.
Yeah.
And what? Yeah.
Yeah. Not many people, but really no one spends, you know, no one spends more than 8 hours. That, you know, there's definitely it's a you know, that's the sort of window that you're getting, but, you know, between 2 and 4 hours is the major window.
I think we need to find those people who are there for less than 30 minutes and give them a damn good slap, quite frankly.
Well, that's right. Yeah, so but
that's shocking.
And it's not very many. That's
fortunately,
that's only 5% of people. So only a couple of the groups sort of had a quick run through. On the right hand side, you can see that we've got the other thing we can do is show trends between places. So for example, this report shows the where else on the island people who went to Summerlands visited. So there's a strong overlap between, Cowes, Churchill Island, the Koala Convention Centre, Conservation Centre, not Convention Centre, and Cape Woolamai.
How were those leaves today? Pretty juicy.
Yeah.
So just back on that one, Martin, how deep can you drill down? Stephen has asked that one again.
Look, it's the opportunities are so wide open in terms of what questions you'd like to ask. So we can combine any combination of location data, and the location data can tell you how many people entered a region, how long they stayed there for, and then combining that with the demographic data. So you can compare the amount of time that people spend in a region, and then you can have exclude people who are there for a particular reason or people from a particular age group. So you can watch what people who are over 60 do compared to people who are under 20. The data's and the reporting platform allows you to interrogate the data that's been collected really very quickly, and then these reports remain updated. So we're going to continue to collect data on Phillip Island until the end of October as part of this trial. Through every day through that period, these reports will be updated.
Sure.
So that so you're getting really accurate, up-to-date information, and none of that waiting for 6 months for a dusty report to hit your desk.
Actually, Phil's just come up with a question as well, and he said, if they leave the app on their phone, can you tell where those 50 people are now?
No. So we're only, and that's part of the privacy.
I think Phil used to work with ASIO in a previous life.
Sure. So we only collect information within the region that they've agreed to be tracked. So so yes, obviously everyone leaves Phillip Island. Well, everyone that we've tracked has left Phillip Island. We have a geographic boundary that we throw around the region that we're tracking. When they leave that area, we stop tracking them, and that's the end of their trip. And it's also a trigger for getting an exit survey.
Yeah. Actually, another question on this one, and this is one that popped into my head as well. I think a few other people are thinking it also. Now, this is the Phillip Island example, but the question is, would this work as well in a small precinct area, like a retail centre, or a precinct like South Bank, or even a small or large attraction? Look, thanks, Tim, for that.
Yeah, look, absolutely. I mean, we're already talking to some attractions about watching where tourists go within an attraction, and I mean, I think we're really excited about the potential for that, where talking to someone and doing a tracking program where they can make changes to the environment that people are in. So if you're Port Arthur, for example, who is one of we're talking to about running a visitor tracking program for them, if they can watch people enter through the front gates and everyone turns left instead of going to the nice shiny new visitor centre, they all go the wrong direction.
Yep.
If they can change the signage there and effect a change, and watch people changing their behaviour, that's a tremendously exciting outcome from our point of view. So yeah, we're actively engaged. So in terms of accuracy, we can do things on a whole of state level, but the GPS data that we collect is accurate enough that we can provide valuable insights on an individual attraction level as well.
Yeah, or even that's like a retail shop. But what about multi-levels, Martin?
Yeah, look, I think multi-levels is a specific and interesting challenge. One of the in terms of the roadmap for the product, where we're looking down the track, we're investigating Wi-Fi triangulation as well, and using those kind of techniques. Then yes, you could track people within a shopping centre and across multiple floors of a building. Yeah, we don't have that at this stage.
Yeah, and Janine's hi Janine, destination Gippsland. In a larger region where people travel within region, can it be set up for the exit survey to understand when those travellers have returned home?
Look, that's a good question. Like as I said, what our behaviour has been to exclude people, to allow people to exit a region and then provide them the exit survey at that point.
Yep.
For Phillip Island, we specifically allowed them a grace period where they could leave the Phillip Island region, have dinner across the channel and come back again and still be considered within the program. In terms of tracking people until they get home, I think you might want to consider whether you really want to know where these people live. But you definitely can, you can have we can set a specific time limit, after they leave your region before we consider them exited and give them that exit survey.
Sure.
Does that answer the question?
I think it probably does. I mean, the great thing is Martin's contact details will be put on screen at the end of the presentation. Any questions at all, please, just jump on the line to Martin. He will love to hear from you.
Yeah.
And Emma's popped in a question as well. Are other states on board with using this as a research method? Because it all started in Tas?
So it all started in Tas. And look, to be perfectly honest, Victoria is a real focus for us at the moment. So we've been thrilled by the support of VTIC, and we've been we've had fantastic engagement from the Victorian industry. We're really keen to get some programs up and running in Victoria over the next few months, before we move on to some other states. In terms of
start with the best. Start with the best.
Yeah. So we are actually the outside of Victoria. The other people that we're negotiating with people in Japan about tracking Australian tourists going to Japan, which I think would be tremendously exciting. But we're very happy to work in other areas of Australia. But look, we're keeping it down south for the moment. And we'll let the rest of Australia catch up once we've got Tasmania and Victoria sorted out.
Good call.
So look, we'll just one more screen on Phillip Island before we move on, which was so this is the information for cows. So smaller proportion of visitors to Phillip Island that we captured visited that. This is really that cow's main street, that restaurant drag through there that we're capturing.
Lots of great attractions in that area.
Yeah, so about 40% of the people that we tracked visited cows, compared to that 70% that made it to Summerlands.
Penguins.
So the penguins really were a big drive for the demographic that we were capturing through the last 2 weeks. Penguins were one of the big drivers. And I think the interesting thing that we were highlighting here in terms of the two pie charts was that the reasons other than to see wildlife and nature, or for some other reason, which were the two main reasons that people came to Phillip Island, so spend time with friends and relatives and to see the motorsports. Those people didn't make it to cows at all in our sample. So it was that more general visitor, the sort of to see wildlife and nature and for some other reason. They were happy to go and have lunch at cows before they then went on and saw the penguins in the afternoon. Whereas the people who were there for some more specific reason, to motorsports or see friends and relatives, they didn't make it up to the town.
Yeah. Okay, another question has popped through. I mean, thanks, Janine, and interesting one. Following on, I guess, from Emma's question as well. How are we going with? I guess Janine is asking: is Visit Victoria looking at this as a whole of region?
Look, we are actively talking to Visit Victoria, and we would be delighted to work with them. And
you're having a good discussion.
We're having a good discussion. Yes. Thank
you, Janine. Good question.
Yeah. So look, just rounding back to in terms of what we're doing with Gulliver now and what we're aiming to do. So what we did on Phillip Island was a really textbook example of the research app, similar to what we did in Tasmania and other places, and that worked really well. Quick to set up. Got into the market, collected some information, and showed it on screen. And providing that back to the local industry so they can make decisions really quickly. But what we're also doing, moving from that monitoring and mapping area and edging into that recommending and guiding phase. We are also extending our suite of products to include a destination app platform. And what that would do is it changes the value proposition in terms of what we're giving to tourists. And so we're actually providing a guide to a region that enhances a tourist's experience. As I said, so it's a different reason for tourists to engage, and it's something that we're exploring, particularly for regions where you may not have that sort of jumping off point of a single point of entry like an airport or a visitor information centre that most people pass through, or so a different way to capture information. And what we're looking at doing there is we're capturing demographic and other information in order to curate a tourist experience within a region. So we can ask them a little bit about themselves, where are they from, what are they interested in, and ask them to capture their location. And then the destination app can then highlight particular tourist attractions and businesses in their local area, in the area that they're visiting. So that's providing value to the tourists, and the tourist organisation can then receive that same reporting off the back of that, using the visualization tools that we've built up. So this is something that we're working on at the moment. We're actively talking to a few people about getting this up and running in different regions, and we're really excited about this as a different way to capture information, and so you're both marketing a region and then collecting information about where people go.
Okay. One more question's come through from my good friend, actually Jeff, done amazing things. Also a fellow Geelong supporter, go Cats. And he's asked the question, I think I know the answer to this one, but I'll ask it anyway. As an attraction over the road from the Koala Conservation Centre, which appeared in the maps on Phillip Island, which you showed before, would they show up separately from the KCC attendance? So that's all about how you can narrow down, I guess.
Absolutely they would. Yeah, so we can absolutely pin down to a side of the road. We can, the locations tracking is that accurate that we can tell
within how many metres roughly? Give or take
10 metres is what we're saying. So 10 metres is really pretty accurate.
Yeah.
It does get. I mean, one of the things that we do get is accuracy information. As people move around, the GPS gets more accurate. But yeah, look, all of the data that we're collecting is really pretty good.
Yeah, so you can narrow it right down from one attraction to the next.
Yep.
And we spoke before on the multi-level stuff as well.
Yeah, that's right.
Excellent.
So look,
follow-up question. You might need to go back on the map on this one.
Okay.
Does this mean that none of the 50 visited us? I probably can't narrow down on the presentation. You probably need to go into the data.
That's true. I mean, if you're, we potentially could throw a region around your specific attraction and see, but yes, in terms of the screenshots that we've got, I can't zoom in that far on the screenshots, unfortunately.
Yeah, Jeff, maybe give Martin a call a little bit later on.
That's right.
When he's got all the data on his machine right in front of him. But I'm sure that knowing how wonderful, amazing thing is, I'm betting many people actually went there.
I'm sure they did.
I have no doubt.
And so look, just to wrapping things up, I'm sure Ian won't mind me saying that, we're, as I said, we've been delighted by the support that we've had from VTIC. It's been fantastic to have them as partners since the conference and through.
It's our pleasure. We love the product. We think it's got so many possibilities for the industry, both big and small within the state of Victoria.
Yeah, so VTIC members receive a 10% discount on Gulliver. Anything that you've seen today, including the research app, the reporting dashboards, and also the new destination app when that comes through. And so we would be absolutely delighted to talk to anyone.
But this does raise the big question, Martin. Fantastic, the 10% discount, especially for our VTIC members. As my kids would say, how much you pay?
Well, look, and I wish the reality is that it depends on a few things. So the pricing is based on the number of tourists that you're looking to capture. So part of the cost for us is in capturing and processing large amounts of data. So we can start off with quite a small sample, and we're aiming to do this on a subscription basis month to month. The other thing that affects the price is how many of those regions we need to set up automated reporting for. So basically, we can customize pricing for people based on the number of tourists that they want to capture and the number of regions that they're wanting that automated reporting.
I guess the big thing there, Martin, is give me a call.
Absolutely, and we'd be very happy to talk.
Yeah, make contact with me. Well, this is me speaking as Martin. Make contact with me, and I'll give you a price.
Absolutely, that's right.
And talk about the possibilities.
That's exactly right.
But actually, I think the possibilities, to be honest, are almost endless and limitless with this.
Yeah, they really are.
It's just fantastic.
All right. Well, look, that's everything I wanted to cover, Dave. My email address is, or if you're welcome to get more information, just go to gulliver.co. And you may contact through that, and that's it. So
and they're coming up at the end of the slide, but there are a couple of things coming up.
Yeah.
So that finishes today's webinar, and we will be putting. Don't go away yet. We will be putting up Martin's contact details on the slide at the very end. But hey, VTIC, we move on. Our next webinar, Wednesday the 21st November, 10:30, same time, third Wednesday of the month, and we're delighted to have another really exciting topic: are direct bookings really free? Which will be presented by a lovely lady called Tammy Matthews from a company called Revenue, R-E-V-E-N, then Y-O-U, Revenue, together with some very interesting industry experts. Now, this one is all about direct bookings, and with the increasing cost of the OTA commission structures being such a hot topic right now, we're going to tackle this question directly and explore distribution via commercial digital channels versus direct bookings. Are they really free at all? OTAs don't have to be the enemy. They're not the enemy if you know how to manage your distribution costs and maximise the audience that they can deliver. So join us on the 21st November for what will promise us to be a very, very informative panel discussion with some industry experts who will share their own experiences and some key insights to help you improve your bottom line. It's for accommodation operators, it's for attractions, anyone who's actually in the direct or indirect bookings field to listen in. It promises to be a really, really good hour. Registrations for this will be open on the VTIC events website very, very soon, vtic.com.au. Go through to events and forward events coming up. And that's the webinar. Jump on that one. It's other upcoming VTIC events, the 14th of November, and more so for the city folk. Our next VTIC mix-up will be at Melbourne Zoo, the week after Melbourne Cup. Jump onto that one. Registrations again for that one. We'd love to have as many people as possible there. All people who attend actually get a free double pass to go to the Melbourne Zoo at a later date. Big one, of course, 22nd of November, the RACV Victorian Tour Resorts Gala Night. Tickets are on sale for that gala. A lot of people work very, very hard in doing their entries. It promises to be a sensational night. In fact, only 2 days before the election, even better. And then on the 5th of December, save your date. EDMs and correspondence are coming out from a number of the partners soon, but it's the annual VTIC Destination Melbourne and Melbourne Convention Bureau Christmas networking function. Promised to be a great night of the city. Would love you to be there. And it is also straight after VI, Visit Victoria's International Exchange. So a great one for even the regional people. If you're coming into Melbourne, stay for the night and come to our Christmas function. Details on that one coming out soon. And of course, the big one, which is just not enough space, 28th of November is the VTIC Annual General Meeting, not to be missed. It's a must attend on the tourism calendar. People get very, very excited about that. Just a reminder, this webinar we've done today will be on our YouTube site for the next 24 hours, vtic.com.au. Jump up to the YouTube logo at the top there. A huge thank you to a number of people, but again, our partners in WebFirm, to Luke, to Tristan, and all the guys at WebFirm. We just love working with you guys. Thank you once again for your partnership with us, and for anything web related, give WebFirm a call. The contact details are there. But Martin, a huge thank you to you for coming here today, for spending your time. I loved it.
Thanks very
Fascinating.
much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, look, it's great to be here, and really enjoyed it, and it's great to have that chance to sort of, thanks so much to the team at Phillip Island for helping us out with that pilot as well. It was great to get down there and collect some real Victorian data.
Absolutely sensational. Thank you. And I'm sure you'll be inundated with calls. But again, this will be on our YouTube site very soon. So signing off now, as you do in the traditional manner, VTIC, improving the world one webinar at a time. Thanks very much.